It doesn't look like a big deal. A quick, sorry, 2 syllables, automatic. Someone bumps into you and somehow you're the one apologizing. A friend misunderstands something you said and you still say, sorry, I didn't mean it like that. Even when you're clearly not responsible, the word slips out before you even think about it. And if you've noticed that you do this a lot, you might have wondered why. Because on the surface, it looks like politeness. But most of the time, it's something deeper than manners. It's a pattern. Some people apologize to take responsibility. Others apologize to take control. Think about the moment right before the apology happens. Someone looks upset, a room goes quiet after you speak, a message gets misinterpreted. There's a brief pause, and in that pause, your mind quickly scans the situation. Did I say something wrong? Did I make things awkward? Did I upset them? Even when the answer is unclear, the apology arrives anyway, because that single word does something powerful. It diffuses tension. The moment you say sorry, the situation softens, conflict shrinks, the emotional pressure in the room drops. And if you've spent enough time around tension growing up, your brain learns something very quickly. Peace is safer than being right. So apologizing becomes a kind of emotional shortcut, not because you're guilty, but because you're trying to keep the atmosphere calm. It's a quiet kind of emotional intelligence. You notice shifts in people's tone. You feel when someone's energy changes. You sense discomfort before anyone even says a word. But instead of observing the tension, you absorb it, and the apology becomes the fastest way to release it. That's why these apologies often come out instantly. They're not calculated, they're reflexes. In the same way some people instinctively defend themselves, others instinctively smooth things over. Sorry becomes social glue. It keeps conversations moving, prevents awkward silences, and makes other people feel heard. But over time, something subtle begins to happen. When you're the one apologizing most often, you slowly begin to occupy a certain role in your relationships. The stabilizer, the emotional shock absorber, the person who keeps things comfortable for everyone else. And that role feels natural at first because it works. Arguments stay small, people see you as kind, and you rarely get labeled as difficult or confrontational. But there's another side to this pattern. When someone constantly takes responsibility for emotional tension, even when it doesn't belong to them, their brain begins to internalize a quiet message. If something feels wrong, I might be the reason. It's not always conscious, but it shows up in small moments. You reread messages before sending them. You over-explain your intentions. You clarify things that didn't actually need clarification. Because somewhere in the background of your mind, you're trying to prevent the possibility of misunderstanding. Not just fixing problems, preventing them before they even exist. And that's where the pattern becomes interesting, because apologizing isn't always about guilt. Sometimes it's about prediction. You're anticipating someone else's reaction before it even happens, and by apologizing early, you reduce the chances of things escalating. It's a form of emotional foresight. But there's a deeper layer that most people miss, because the real reason some people apologize so often isn't just empathy, and it isn't just politeness. It's control. Not control in the loud, aggressive sense, but quiet control. When you apologize, you're shaping how the situation unfolds. You're guiding the emotional direction of the conversation. Think about it. When someone says sorry, the other person is suddenly placed in a new position. They either accept the apology or reassure you, don't worry about it, it's fine, you didn't do anything wrong. In other words, the apology subtly forces the tension to resolve. The moment shifts from confrontation to reassurance. And if you grew up in environments where conflict felt unpredictable or overwhelming, this pattern starts to make even more sense, because unpredictability creates anxiety, but apologies create structure. They turn messy, emotional moments into something manageable, even if that means taking responsibility that wasn't yours to begin with. Over time, this becomes part of your social identity. You become the easygoing one, the understanding one, the one who doesn't make situations complicated, and people often appreciate that about you. But identity patterns like this have a strange side effect. The more consistently you play a role, the more people unconsciously expect it from you. They expect you to smooth things over, to be accommodating, to be the one who says sorry. And when expectations settle in like that, your brain adapts. You start apologizing earlier, sometimes before anyone even reacts, almost as if you're preventing something that hasn't happened yet. And if you listen closely, you'll notice something interesting about these apologies. They're rarely about big mistakes. They appear in the smallest moments. Sorry for the long message. Sorry if that sounded weird. Sorry, I'm probably overthinking. It's not really an apology, it's a softening, a way of lowering your presence just enough to make sure you don't disrupt the emotional balance around you. Because for some people, standing fully in their words feels risky. Not dangerous, just uncomfortable. So they cushion their voice, they pad their statements, they make themselves slightly smaller before anyone else has the chance to. But here's the part most people never notice. People who apologize too much are often the same people who care deeply about how others feel. They're observant, emotionally aware, and sensitive to social signals that many people completely miss. That awareness can be a strength, but when it turns inward too often, it becomes self-blame. The difference between empathy and self-blame is surprisingly thin. Empathy says, I can see how you feel. Self-blame says, it must be because of me. When someone lives close to that line for long enough, apologizing begins to feel normal, automatic, almost invisible. But if you've recognized yourself in these moments, something interesting has already happened, because awareness quietly changes patterns. Not instantly, not dramatically, but subtly. The moment you begin noticing when the apology appears, you also begin noticing the silence before it. And that silence is where identity slowly reshapes itself. Because behaviors like this are rarely random. They're stories your brain learned about safety, harmony, and belonging. Stories written long before you noticed them. And the word sorry is often just one sentence in that larger story. If this explains something you've quietly noticed about yourself, then there's more beneath the surface. Human behavior is full of patterns like this, small habits that reveal deeper identities. Understanding them doesn't change who you are overnight, but it does make the invisible parts of you visible. And that awareness is where real understanding begins. But this pattern is only a single thread in a much larger story. There's another layer to how we perceive ourselves that often goes unnoticed. I've explored that missing piece in the video right here. I'll see you there.